Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I am Leslie Appleton-Young. I am here with the Coffee and Conversations with the last episode of the year. Today, I am delighted that you have taken the time to be here live. And for those of you that are going to watch it on a recording, have I got a treat for you? And my hope and guess is that many of you already know Pam Blair. Pam, hi.
Hello, great to
Welcome.
be here.
Wonderful to see you. I mean, when I really thought about what I wanted to say about Pam, I feel that in so many ways she personifies what Women Up is all about, and she's incredibly authentic. She's a risk taker. She is always learning and she's always there to help other people. She's just a show up person. And it's been fun to watch her over the years and in the last year to get to know her um, in a much more close and intimate way because of what we're going to be talking about today. So I guess by way of introduction, and I'll say a few things, and Pam, could you fill in a little bit of background? She's a realtor from Portland, Oregon. She has her own company with her husband, and it's YogaBug Real Estate. So it is real estate, it is lifestyle, it is the great Northwest. They have a wonderful dog. She does real estate updates from the top of beautiful mountains. And she's also a TV host for the American Dream Selling Portland. And this is a really very high quality show. It's been nominated for several awards and so on. So I just want to welcome all of you in the chat. Please let us know where you're watching us from. And Pam, with that brief introduction, please fill in some of the blanks that you think would be interesting for the group.
Sure, yeah. Well, you did that is it in a nutshell.
Right.
Well, yes, I am I own this little brokerage. We have a growing team, which is very exciting, and we're very lifestyle oriented in that I'm a dedicated yogi. I teach yoga, I teach retreats locally and nationally. And I've had the pleasure of leading some retreats from the women I met at WomanUP. So that's been, just a true joy and growing experience for me. I also love to travel. And I'm an avid, I just want to be outside. I'm an avid gardener. I love to eat organic whole food. I love to cook it. I love to feed people. That's the Italian side of me.
Oh, wonderful. I knew it was in there somewhere. Now that I'm married to an Italian, I can spot it.
Now you know. That's
Right.
right. You show up and we
Right.
feed you. No, but yeah, that's and I do work with my husband and we're life partners and yeah, we're just life partners, which is a wonderful thing to have. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to discuss this very kind of important and timely topic, I think.
Well, mindset is everything. I think we could maybe start with that. And we are going to be discussing this amazing trip that you took. And I don't even know if trip's the right word, to Patagonia. But before you start, I did a little research just for myself, so I kind of be in the loop. If you want to go to Patagonia, it's at least a 22-hour flight. It could be twice that, depending on how many stops you make and what airlines you choose. But it is a commitment just to get down to Patagonia. It is not a country, it's a part of southern South America that is both in Chile and in Argentina. And when you think of Patagonia, you think of remote wilderness, you think of not that many people, you think of adventure, you think of kind of the rugged individualism. And maybe Pam's going to tell us it's all about survival. So would you please just kick off in the way you'd like to, how this all came about and where you were at the time pre Patagonia?
Yeah, I'd love to. So pre-Patagonia, well, the way it happened was people say, well, was this a bucket list item? Because it's a, it's quite an ordeal to schedule this or plan this. It was not a bucket list item for me. Actually, my friend Karen, a good friend of mine, I was actually heading from one trail to the other here in the Pacific Northwest, and she texted me, called me, and did it repeatedly. I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with Karen? And then I finally, when I ended up with some signal, I called her and I said, hey, what's up? And she said, listen, I've always wanted to go to Patagonia. It's on my bucket list. And you're one of the very few people I know in this world that would go with me. Would you go? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And that was
Oh
it.
my
She's like, well,
God.
don't you want to know the details? I said, no, I trust you. Just send me the link or whatever. And then I went
Oh
and
my
did my
God.
hike.
Did you know where it was at that
No,
time?
I didn't. And that was well, I knew it was in South America
Right.
and I knew it was epically gorgeous. And I'm an avid outdoors person. So that much I knew. And I also had traveled with Karen before. So I trusted her and she's very smart. And that much I knew. So that was in, I think, beginning of April. And so we had to put down the deposit. So I looked at the website enough to put down the deposit. And then honestly, I shelved it. And that was in April, and the trip was in February the following year. So I
Was there a guide? Was there a guide? Were you putting down a deposit for a guided situation? What
we
was
just
it?
so we decided to have an adventure company organize part of the trip for us.
Okay.
So we did this completely unguided. We chose the dates, but what they did was because there's so many moving pieces in just like getting to Patagonia, and then when you get to the Torres del National Park, it gets scheduled out a year in advance, and you can only stay
Wow.
at these refugios. You can't just backpack and camp anywhere. We did a 91-mile backpacking trek through the wilderness and the mountains of Chile, the Chile part of Patagonia. And so this company basically, there's so many buses and trains and like all these things. So they organized it. So that's what we put the deposit on. And that
Okay.
I would highly recommend that if you are interested in this voyage.
Okay. So you said, and then I shelved it. So what does that mean? You completely forgot about it?
I'm a very busy person. I keep myself very busy. I have lots of balls in the air all the time. So this is a pattern in my behavior is that I'll say yes to something, often not really knowing what I say yes to, just having a gut reaction that yes, it's a yes instead of a no. And then basically August rolled around and it was time so I didn't look at anything. I didn't even know
Okay.
where I was going until August. And then I'm like, all right, I guess it's time to get some airfare. Karen said, yeah, I'm going to get some airfare. And so then I looked at where I was going on the map, no joke, because I had to, schedule the airfare. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually going to the bottom of the earth. I had no idea. So, yeah,
Surprise.
yeah. So, and then an interesting thing happened between August and let's say, the time I left. Um, I definitely was having a lot of anxiety and a lot of overwhelm. I was in a place in my business where it was very evident to me that I was in a massive growth state and that there was really no turning back, that these were my next steps. And so I was planning for that. I had a 5-year plan, I have a 10-year plan, and that meant hiring people, changing all my systems, changing some of the people I had in my organization and growing my business. And I was also dealing with some things at home. My husband, he's a lovely person. He works with me, but he has some cognitive issues that are really quite significant in his daily functioning. And it just felt like all of that was coming to a head for me.
Wow.
And I was feeling overwhelmed. And I'm a pretty courageous person. I mean, I can walk through a bad neighborhood at night and not flinch. And when I thought about going to Patagonia, I was terrified. And I thought, why am I terrified? Because I knew that I could physically do it. What is
Yeah.
it about this that's terrifying me? And honestly, I couldn't see it until I got there.
So it wasn't a case of you were stuck or you were overwhelmed and you thought, what experience can I go generate for myself that will knock this out of the park? It was a gut yes. And then your life evolved and it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah, and you know,
Wow.
I always know that when I feel a lot of anxiety or I mean, I really felt terrified at times, and I can't even tell you the last time I felt that way. The way that I interpret those emotions in my life is there's a high likelihood that I'm doing something really right because there's a part of me that knows that there's a part of me that's dying, a part of me that is no longer serving me, and something else is stepping in. And because of my commitment to my daily practices, my yoga practices, my spiritual practice, just the way I lead my life, what can seem like, oh my God, what an amazing coincidence that you ended up going to Patagonia when you were at this point. There was no coincidence about it.
Right.
There was none. I was just in the moment awake enough to say yes, is the truth of it. And, and I just kept moving forward despite my fear.
Kind of what I'm thinking in my head is just this mantra about being open to the universe, which actually, as a someone that was trying to control the uncontrollable in my marriage, I was just like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. And then really feeling what it meant to take a hint, and say yes. So that's I need to just sit with that for a minute. Do you know what you were terrified of? Could you identify? Because clearly, physically, you can hike and you could do that 91-mile
Yeah.
trek.
It was it was the unknown. And
Okay.
one beautiful thing about a Patagonia for me, and I think it would probably be for anybody who goes there, is that there's no way, regardless of what you research, that you can know what that experience is going to be like. It's impossible. And that's so powerful. It, I was traveling to a place where I didn't know the language. I didn't really know where I was going. I was traveling alone for part of it. I had never backpacked before, even though I hike many, many miles. Um, yeah, and there was so much that I just didn't know. And that's what was terrifying to
Okay.
me. And once I got on the plane, that dissipated. It was then I was in it and I was fully into it. And the interesting thing about Patagonia for me is it was probably one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had in my life, and one of the most transformative in that, um, for example, for 14 nights, I slept in a different place every single night. That sometime was a hallway, a plane. I was in hostels. I mean, I had no control over where I slept, what I ate. Once I got there and we actually did hit the trail, we had no control over the weather. The weather in Patagonia is just wild and fierce. You had to get from one refugio to the other. You can't stop along the way. And I had no control over the mosquitoes, over anything. And so it was this continuous practice of surrendering, just over and over and over to be in the moment. It was intense.
You know, a few minutes ago, you talked about part of you was dying, and that really stuck with me, and then all of this discomfort about being reborn, um, is really something to think about. So I want to talk about mindset, the mindset that you had, going in, and the transformation of your mindset during this incredible trek.
Yeah, mindset going in was, as I expressed, I knew that this was big for me because I would have never had that huge emotional reaction. I just know myself. And there were times that I thought I'll just cancel the trip. And I thought, Pam, don't you dare do that to yourself. Don't you dare. And so I stepped into it thinking, just do one thing at a time. Just put one foot forward and trust. And as I was on the trek, it was a very similar mindset in that I had no idea that I had signed up for something that was going to make me face some fears that I've had since I was a little girl. And for example, something like mosquitoes love me. I mean, they devour me. And there were thousands of them. And when I found out there were going to be mosquitoes, because the people we signed up with said, oh, the bugs won't be bad. And then I met these couple of these Australian guys and I said, well, how's the trek? Oh God, on day 2 and 3, you just get eaten alive. And I'm like, oh no. And so what happened was, as the mosquitoes started to bite, I said, Pam, there's nothing you can do about this right now, except put your attention elsewhere. Let them bite you and don't pay any attention to the bites. Do you
Wow.
know every bite disappeared within a half a day? It was where I chose to place my attention that dictated my experience. And that happened when, I was there for 15 nights. I probably slept for 3 of those. So I'm exhausted. I can't sleep. I'm too hot, or I'm getting bitten, or I'm sleeping next to some dude that's snoring and I want to kill him. And it's like, Pam, just be grateful you're laying in this bed and your legs are resting. You have 8 hours to rest your legs. So it was this continuous of kind of turning around what I was experiencing, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I mean, you identified that there was nothing you can do about it. So how do I make it the least horrible? And that is by surrendering, right?
Yeah, and I love adventure. Like, I am inherently a person that loves adventure. So don't get me wrong. I loved that trip. I would sign up for another trip like that in a heartbeat. But that doesn't mean that adventure or whatever we choose doesn't come with an enormous amount of challenges. Usually the higher we want to go, the more we want to explore ourselves, the more challenges that will be put before us. So how is it when we're in those challenges? Where's our attention? What's our attitude around the challenges? That dictates our experience. It's not what's happening right here in this physical. Our mind believes like, oh, because this person's this way, then they're affecting my day. No, actually, they're not at all. They're affecting their day. It's me deciding how I'm going to be in that moment and where I'm going to put my attention that dictates my reality. And that's what Patagonia was for me. And what occurred was, when I came back, before I had left, I had reached out to some of my WomanUP gals and the leaders, and I said, listen, I know my business is about ready to change, and I really need to talk to some people about this. And I reached out to Vanessa Bergmark, and she's like, Pam, I have these 2 people. I think maybe, reach out to them. And I said to her, well, I don't have time before I go to Patagonia to do that. And she, I'm too busy. And she said, no, before you leave, you're going to reach out to these people. And so I did. And one of them gave me an assignment, and she said, every day, just write down how you want the next 5 years to look for you. And I thought, oh, cool. I'll have all this time, I'll be able to journal and sit. I mean, I'm not working. I'm just hiking. I had no time at all, but I did do that exercise in my mind. And when I came back, within 3 days, I had hired that coach. And what I realized was, because I was willing to step into that level of discomfort and open myself to it's so beautiful that nature, like the vastness and the intensity of that nature, was just completely representative of what I was stepping into. It was just a reflection of me inside. And I came home and literally my life changed. It was like there was no going back at all. It was not an option. And so it's just been full force ahead since. I came home and I realized there are some dynamics in my relationship that they don't work. They've never worked. I had to address them. Very challenging to do. I hired an operations manager. I'm hiring new agents. I'm saying no to a lot of things, saying yes to different things. And it's been a year of me of feeling completely out of control. And I've had to just ride with it again, just like Patagonia, like just put one foot in front of the other, trust that you're on this path for a reason. It's amazing how the trips, I mean, it's still going on.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It is. Yeah, it is. It
So,
was just symbolic of something that was happening inside of me.
you know, the mind body connection is something that you know a lot about, and you live through yoga and your spiritual practice. And as you were going through these very challenging experiences, and I'm sure mosquitoes was just the beginning, right? There was just really rough terrain, and I don't know if you want to illuminate on how
Yeah.
miserable it could get. So how did that work out in terms of being like a strengthening force for you?
Mhm. It, there was one night where there were a couple of times that really stand out to me. One night, I couldn't sleep again, and it was almost the last night. I was pretty exhausted, and the only place that I could go was in a hallway, and there was no protection. I was in a public place, and I thought, but I need to rest. I need to get away from whatever I couldn't sleep. And so I went out and I laid down on this, seat basically, and covered myself up with a blanket. And I thought, and I felt so vulnerable. Um, and I just thought, no, I'm protected. Like this is it. This is not what, I would relate to that in past as being like, I have to be careful, don't fall asleep, something might happen to me. And instead, I think because I was so constantly kind of negotiating the elements and that all these things, my body just completely let go and I fell asleep. And I woke up in that space, and I, I don't know how else to describe it other than, and then there was one day that I didn't feel well. We really were careful about what we ate, because if you didn't feel well, it was a big deal. Because I mean, the only way out of there was helicopter. That was it. And so that's the only way they brought the food in. And one day, the winds were about 60 miles an hour. And they were so strong that one gust literally blew my friend over. So we started out with 60-mile-an-hour winds. That turned into sleet and rain. And then we had to take half of our clothes off because the sun came out. Then we had to climb a mountain. And then the weather systems changed. You
My
went up, and it
God.
was sleeting and raining when you came back up. And then as you came back down, now you're soaked, and then you end up at this refugio. And the wind is howling so much that you don't want to go outside. And I think there's just something about, and I didn't feel well that day. And what happened, my friend's an amazing person, but I would say like compassion about somebody not feeling well is not her strength. And I just said, Pam, you go as slow as you need to go, and you just put one foot in front of the other, and just focus on one foot in front of the other. And there's immense power in just being that simple.
Right.
And that's how we get everywhere we go, is by putting one foot in front of the other.
Right. Even if we're not thinking that way, that's the way it is.
There's no shortcut.
Yeah.
You have to take the steps to get where you want to go. And sometimes there are immense forces against you, and sometimes the wind's at your back and it's blowing you in that direction. That day they just happened to be all against me. But we've all experienced both of those sides.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see if Megan or Melanie could show a couple of the pictures that you posted. YogaBug Real Estate on Facebook, and even more on Instagram. You were really generous in what you posted, and if we could just go through some of those, if you want to kind of talk about them at all. But
And this
you're
was
looking pretty badass in that picture, I can
thank
want to
you.
say.
So thank you. That was the morning after the day I didn't feel well. And there was a beautiful sunrise. So the wind stopped in the morning and we were looking out on a lake, and there was an incredible sunrise that morning. And I felt completely rejuvenated the next day. It was pretty amazing.
And was this sunrise?
Yeah, it was sunrise.
Oh,
I was looking out over I mean, the water in Patagonia is azure blue, even the rivers. Like you can't dip your toes or hands in any of the water because they're so adamant about keeping the environment pristine. So the color of the water is very breathtaking.
gorgeous. Let's go to the next one.
Oh,
Ah,
isn't that insane?
wow.
That was
So,
my last day of hiking.
okay.
And I forget how many hours we hiked that day, but this is a very iconic place in the park. And it's the closest to the initial refugio. So that is water in front of me, believe it or not. That's how clear and pristine that environment is. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. That's looking out of one of the geodesic domes I stayed in.
Ah, fun.
We stayed in domes and, in tents, all kinds of places. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love this picture.
I do too. That was from the day I didn't feel well either. Yeah. Yeah, that's how everything was.
Yeah,
It's like, all right, where do we go next? Where are we supposed to land tonight? Where do our heads land?
right. It gives you an idea of how much more you need to go.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty.
Ah, what is this?
I think, a lot of these are from that day after I didn't feel well. That's over that lake. So we had to we walked all the way around this lake. And at the beginning of that lake, like where the sun's rising, there is a massive glacier. It's the biggest glacier I've ever seen in my life. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it, but a glacier creates that lake, which is pretty incredible. We walked along
Gorgeous.
that glacier for an entire day. There's Karen and I. So the thing about the trek is you can be down here and then you have to go all the way to the top of that mountain, then you have to go back down in one day. So it's,
In one day?
yes, to get to the next place.
I I'm in awe.
It
Absolute
was a
awe.
bit crazy. Yeah. But
So are you and Karen closer than you were after this experience? Was she part of your, emotional mindset journey, or were you guys kind of in separate places? What was that like?
um, we are closer. My hiking partner here in Portland, he said, well, either you and Karen are going to be best friends by the end of this, or you'll hate each other. And
Right.
the interesting thing is neither happened. Karen and I definitely created a bond that we didn't have prior to this, but she and I are both incredibly independent people. So we're more like sisters, I would say. And yeah, and so she I'd say the biggest gift Karen gave me along the trek was not only inviting me, but one morning we were heading up to the hardest part of the trek, and I started sharing my challenges with my husband's cognitive issues. And very shortly, and we were hiking through this forest, quote, but really you were hiking on top of tree roots because it was so wet that you had to tiptoe on top of tree roots. Otherwise, you'd be like up to your ankles in mud. And that was like halfway up the mountain. We were doing that. So you're really focusing on your footwork and it's strenuous. But she stopped and she turned around and looked at me and she said, Pam, you need help. And it really sunk into my skin. She said, Bruce is an amazing human being, but you need help. And my word for 2024 has been help. And I have, in a way I've never had in my life, embraced receiving help. So she gave me a great gift.
That's that's amazing. I saw as we all do, internet meme that kind of really woke me up, and it said that fierce independence is a trauma response because I have so much trouble asking people for help. And it showed this woman carrying a, washing machine down the stairs or something. And I thought that would be me. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need to wait. This is, so what is that about our backgrounds, that asking for help is not like an opportunity to give someone else the opportunity to be of use, of help to you,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Karen owned 3 restaurants and a yoga studio before she was 30 years old. She's an amazing human being. And I remember asking her, I said, how did you do that? And she said, I just surrounded myself with really talented,
Yeah,
amazing people. She's a very smart woman. And so, I've listened and learned.
right, and made this opportunity come your way. What were some of the biggest surprises? I'm sure as you got closer to the trip, you had some expectations. Oh my God, look at that. Is that a rainbow?
Yes.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. Yeah, there were like double, triple rainbows there. And that was just a common occurrence, nature's really amazing. Um, my biggest surprise, and Karen and I both laugh about this to this day, is we thought, oh, well, we'll have all this time, we'll be able to like journal, we'll be able to stop and sit and take in the views. And we really had, we really, both of us embraced that. And I thought, oh, I have this, oh my God, I have 14 days out in nature. And none of that happened because you spent every ounce of energy. You woke up in the morning, you ate as much as you could so that you could have enough energy. And then you had to get to the next spot. And so most of the time you didn't want to sit down and even eat lunch because either you had the mosquitoes biting you or the wind or the whatever you had to get. And so I was really surprised by that. And then it became more of a walking meditation instead
Yeah.
of this, oh, I'm going to sit and have this stillness. It ended up being this there. Karen and I talked very little for 14 days.
Yeah.
And um, that was a huge blessing too, to be able to be with somebody where you're comfortable in silence is an
Yes.
unusual experience. So I also thought we would talk more, and we ended up being very silent together. So I'd say, and the other thing is, I thought there would be more Americans on this trek. Very few, very few people from the States.
How many people did you run into? Was it in the tens or hundreds or?
I would say more in there are 2 treks you can do. You all end up at the same starting point. There's the W trek, which is the short trek, and we did the O trek, which takes you literally all the way around the park. That's the big one. So most people do the W trek, so I would imagine I would have interacted with a lot more people.
Yeah.
With the O trek, you basically you start from one point, and so you're going with the same people, ending up at the same refugio as long as people make it there each night. So I would say, maybe like 60 of us would show up at the
Yeah.
refugios, but there was not a lot of socializing. It was people were friendly, or they were from all over the United States, but I think it took so much energy to do the journey. You were the people who you were either cooking your own food or making sure that you got to bed. You basically got there, took a shower if there was any kind of facility, ate dinner, and went to bed. And then that was the rest of it. And then you woke up the next day because you had to preserve your energy. Like
Right.
nobody was partying here,
Well, as you were on the trail where there weren't like traffic jams or anything like that, like everybody trying to get to the tap of Half Dome or
No,
anything,
actually, we
right? It
hardly got
was,
in that whole time. In 91 miles, we hardly saw anyone.
yeah, see, that's
Yeah.
just,
Yes.
so I want to ask you in retrospect about comfort zones.
Mhm.
Um, Looking back pre-Patagonia, do you feel that you were in a comfort zone, that the Patagonia trip showed you you're no longer there?
Yes. Yes is the answer. And
Yeah.
what I feel like I'm seeing more and more, I mean, there are certain things that are comfortable, that are pleasurable,
Yeah.
Leslie, but I I think for myself, the things that came up are more the things that are comfortable to me that actually aren't really pleasant. Um, like attachments to certain things that, I formed them because I needed to form them and I needed them, but they're no longer serving me. Codependent patterns, things like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's interesting when we say the word comfort, we think, oh, that's pleasurable, but actually we get comfortable with both polarities. And
We
for
do.
me, it's been more showing the polarity that I decided to decide, my mind decided it was comfortable, but it actually was never comfortable. I just did it probably as a survival mechanism.
Right, right. I hear you.
Mhm.
One of my favorite mantras from a counselor years ago was 4 words: no change, no change, right? So it's just the older I've gotten, the more brilliant that sounds, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so if you want to grow and evolve and change and do better, you can't stay in a comfort zone. And doing something that physically challenges you, what I'm hearing is it also mentally challenged you. Like it was, I
It
just am
did.
fascinated by that connection. When I kind of woke up in my life 10 or 12 years ago, I mean, my whole soul cycle thing was part of that, and I remember the first class I took, it was two things. I was like, oh, that's cardio. Like, oh my God. And then at the end of the class, I was literally sobbing. I mean,
Oh,
it
mm,
tapped into this vein of being alive and feeling
mm,
your body. So I associate comfort zones to a certain extent with both. And I just would love
mm.
to hear your thoughts on that as you look back on that experience, because you were already there physically, but it
Yeah.
sounds like you weren't in survival mode for 91 miles before.
No, no, I wasn't. I was. I mean, I'm a very active person. I actually, it's I have to be physically active in an unusual way in order to maintain my balance. My mom said I've been that way since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So I just came into the world that way. And so there were days when my feet really, really, really hurt at the end of those hikes. But you're right, that wasn't the biggest challenge for me. It was more of embracing the things that I was afraid of, whether it was sleeping in a hallway or, um, yeah, just some of those when you're exposed and pushed to that limit, like these
Right.
primal fears come up, these
Yeah.
primal things. I mean, it's about eating, pooping, peeing, sleeping, it like comes down to these really basic things. And there's a sense of, your humility gets stripped through that. Like, I mean, eh, Karen and I mean, we spent a lot of hours naked together, like it was just because you're out in the wilderness and you didn't have any privacy and it's just, there's something extremely humbling about taking yourself to that kind of level of, and everybody has a different level. And I don't have a problem with any of that stuff, but it just took it all to a place that I hadn't experienced before. And now I'll tell you what, when I travel now, my husband will have some anxiety. I'm like, oh my God, this is nothing. Like, this is
Nothing.
nothing.
My God.
No problem. I'll sleep in the airport. No problem.
So it sounds like coming back, you reset your perspective on a lot of things, right? In
I,
your life, in
yeah, and it's still
business.
happening, like literally as of now,
Mm.
today, and yeah, and I don't think it will stop until until, this cycle is in its next phase. I mean, I just I have let go of when I hired my ops manager, my goal, and I'd say we're at 50%. My goal was to give her 75% of the work that I do. It's like really significant. And then I'm bringing on 2 more agents to take more of that. And I'm moving into a whole different phase of my life. I love doing real estate. Don't get me wrong. I love negotiating in particular. So I probably won't let go of those things right now, but I'm very inspired to create environments similar to what I experienced for women, like the community and WomanUP. You know, I have in my hopper, I have a goal to create adventures that take people out of their comfort zone, not 91 miles in Patagonia. But there's really something about getting physical and getting out of your comfort zone that
Right.
fosters connection with people and fosters an inner growth that really, I think it's like it speeds everything up. And that's really exciting to me. So I'm really excited to create a path of, you know, bringing in nature, adventure, wellness, all of that with personal and professional growth. So yeah, that's
Well, that's, all those pieces were already there pre-Patagonia, but where you are today is I'm making it happen, right? And really not wondering why it's not happening, but hiring people to help you.
exactly. Yeah, I can't.
You got the
I just
can-do mindset now.
yeah. Yeah, now my practice each day now is when I have the impetus to do what I used to do, I'm like, pause, 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 pause. Nope. Ask so and so to do that. Give that to so and so. Give that to so and so. Say no to this. Say yes to this. So I'm practicing being less automated about what I do and really thinking about, and then also allowing myself to be like, all right, let's go ahead and do this. And then the next day, sometimes I come in and my staff looks at me and I'm like, no, I changed my mind. We're not doing that. We're taking a different path. And like, oh God. But yeah, I'm just giving myself space to think differently. At least I hope I am.
You feel very light, and that doesn't mean you didn't feel light when I've seen you before, but I just feel this
Mm,
um, advice for other people that,
yeah.
what can you share that might help people kind of get moving,
Yeah.
you know?
I would say one thing is, and this, I shared this, is when we have a response, whether it's a physical response or an emotional response to either a current experience or a past experience or an upcoming experience, often we label that response like this is good, this is bad, this is danger, this is safety. And one of my big takeaways was when I felt that terror, and this is only because of my practice that I have, is to again pause and be like, what's the message for me? What if it wasn't that? What if this anger didn't mean that? What if this anger wasn't really at that person? What if it's about something else? Like, I think it's a sense of curiosity that I would encourage people to maybe just step into a little bit, and to when you do a yoga practice, you practice the mind body connection and you learn to trust yourself. And that to me is one of the biggest gifts of yoga or any mindful
Oh,
practice.
yes, yes.
And that's an elusive thing for a lot of people, is trusting ourselves. So, encouraging any kind of practice around cultivating that, whether it's whatever it might be going for a run, it might be whatever it might be for you. But when we get those signals, I guess it's just pausing and being like, what's the message for me?
What's the
And
message?
it may be that we never find out what the message is, but it's the curiosity to know what the message is that's important. And that's why I ended up in Patagonia, is just this like, oh, okay, sure, curiosity. And yeah, and I think a lot of people are extremely uncomfortable right now. And it's important to remember that this discomfort is absolutely essential for growth. It's
Right.
absolutely essential. And yeah, there's
You
no way
know,
around it.
no, and you're not going to change anything if you're okay with where you are, as miserable as that might be. And I loved what you said about trust, because you need to trust that where you're going is going to be different and better than where you've been stuck for all those years. And sometimes again, this comfort zone or codependency or people pleasing or all of the things. I've been thinking, like, in my generation that grew up in the 50s, the little boys were like, pedal to the metal, go for it, blah blah blah. And as a little girl, it was like, oh, put on the brakes, don't make space, be small, don't upset anybody, make sure everybody's okay. And I'm sorry, that's the world that's the world I grew up in. And so being able to work my way out of that, it was just you crystallize that with this trip of discomfort, and then this terror, right? And then trust that it's all going to work out, because it's really all inside you, and to
Right.
see your future being a fusion of all the things you love
Pretty
doesn't
exciting.
get any better than that.
It doesn't. And yeah, yeah, I'm still working with that business coach, and we had a session this morning, and we were talking about this kind of inhibition around allowing ourselves to shine, to trust ourselves enough um, that whatever we aspire to, like, what if there were no withholds? What if, I mean, that's Patagonia, like you're just going for it, right? Like if you have a withhold, good luck. You're just gonna, but talking about how, what is the fear behind, what if like you really did what you wanted to do? Like, what if you let go of all that? What if all this stuff that you thought you were supposed to control, what if you like really let go of all of it? And that was my conversation this morning. So it was so relevant to our time together.
Yes, yes. And the corollary to that, which I still am in love with, is just the whole let them, and
Oh, love
just
it.
take yourself out of the equation. Like, you don't have to do that anymore. Oh,
No, no. And yeah, I mean, that's a practice and process for me constantly of, I tend to think that people are dependent on me, and in a way they are, but in a lot of ways they aren't. It's just something I created in my head. And,
yeah.
what kind of freedom do I have personally? And whenever I let go of that, yeah, so much good stuff.
So just one more question. Do you have another Patagonia trip or experience on the horizon that you're thinking about?
I do. So I'm part Italian, and I've figured out where my Italian roots are from. So I'm anxious to go back. I'm going to Croatia next year, but not to do a trek, but I would like to
What
do,
part of Italy?
well, I'm Northern Italy,
Okay.
and I want to do a similar trek in the Dolomites.
Wow.
I asked Karen, and she said, yes, Pam, I'd love to, but I'm going to France right now. I'm like, well, fine. I'll wait for you. So, yeah, I'd like to do that. There's a connection for me, something about Italy and the Dolomites, because my family's from that area. And so, yeah, so I've been researching that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's something very profound about going back to your homeland, whatever that looks like, and as disconnected you may have been during your life because it was your grandparents, or that
Mhm.
that came over, to actually feel that feeling,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very drawn. So again, I'm just going to follow that, and it's kind of fun. It's like, I'd be fine doing that by myself. Like, woo, who's that?
Yeah, that's something. Oh my goodness. Well, Pam, this has been delightful. Do you have any parting words that you'd like to share with the Woman Up community? And I just want you to know this has been really fabulous, and so many other things to talk about
Yeah.
related to it. But congratulations for diving into something terrible, terrifying, and difficult, and absolutely wonderful, and
Mm.
listening to all the lessons.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, my parting words is I'm so grateful to be here. I'm grateful to get to know you better, Leslie, and the WomanUP community is very, very dear to my heart. I haven't had as much time to invest in it, so this is very meaningful to me, and I just want the community to know how much, you've really made a big difference in my life. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate you, and I appreciate it too, just being able to have this connection with so many amazing women. And I hope that people are able to go to the conference next year. It's back in Pasadena. It's a 1-day event, so it will be very accessible location, and the tickets and all of that. It's 1 day, and I believe it's June
I think it's
11th.
the 11th, I think.
Is it the 11th? Yeah, June 11th. So the tickets are on sale now if anybody is ready to make that commitment. But it's just great. So Pam, thank you. This has been
Mm.
really special.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. If anybody's like the idea of going on adventures with me lights your fire, reach out. I'll put you on the list.
All right. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving and holiday season, and really hope to see you next year. Take care.
Bye.